I'm going to go ahead and get started. Lauren or Jessica, if you don't mind, go ahead and drop the agenda in the chat so that people can follow along with us. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we do have a presentation that we're going to share as well. So sometimes you'll be seeing our three heads here. Sometimes you'll be seeing a presentation, but really excited about today's topic. It's a big, important topic. I've been doing digital marketing for a long, long time, a couple of decades now, and I haven't seen a shift like this in a long time, where it has impact on our traffic, it has impact on our performance. It's so new that we really don't know what to do. And so I'm really excited to introduce you to our special guest. And this special guest is got something really interesting. He is our very first three-peat guest. Now, we've been doing these growth shows for a long time now, but for the last 3 years, we've had Jesse McFarland join us about this time every year to help us up to know what's going on in the world of search and AEO. And the thing I love about Jesse is that he's a guy that's out there doing B2B, SEO, AEO every day. He's not just some LinkedIn guru that's going to tell you what he thinks is going on, but he knows and he's in the trenches every day, and he's going to drop some really good information for all of us today. So, Jesse, without further ado, I'd like you to say hi to everybody.
Hey, everyone. Great to be here. Yes, that's 3 years in a row. So super stoked to be here. Let's talk about AEO. It's a common question,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. And so we'll be digging into that. It was fun last year. Jesse and I were debating, is it SEO? Is it LMO? There were like 25 acronyms. I think there probably were 25 acronyms back then. So Jesse's information is in the agenda. I've got a link to his LinkedIn profile. I've also got a link to his website. Definitely follow Jesse on LinkedIn. He's got some of the best, most useful, practical tips that he publishes on a regular basis. Jesse, I love your carousels. I mean, I think there's some of the most useful content that I see out there, especially in the world of AEO, SEO. So be sure to follow Jesse. He's got a great, good information for you. Also want to introduce you to our moderators. We have two moderators these days, one to moderate our LinkedIn stream audience. So for those of you that are watching on LinkedIn, hi, welcome. Please also chat in where you're watching in from and what you're trying to learn today. And Jessica will be moderating that chat. And then we also have Lauren here on Riverside with us, who's been our moderator for a long time now. Lauren, you want to say hi? Oh, you're muted.
I started talking and then immediately saw the mute button. Yeah, hi, everybody. It's good to be here today. I'll be in the chat. If you have any questions as we go along, just let me know and I'll save them. And if we don't answer them while we're going along, we'll try answering them at the end of the session. So,
yep. Awesome. Great. Well, let's go ahead and follow along on the agenda here. So if you're tracking along with us here, the first thing I wanted to do is just kind of paint the landscape. You know, Jesse's going to get into some real practical, tactical things here in a second, but where does AEO and SEO really fit into the world of a B2B and pipeline growth engine, demand gen engine? And so I wanted to share with you a graphic that's there in the agenda that is our pipeline growth framework. And the interesting thing about that is there's two really critical places where AEO and SEO fit in. If you're looking at the graphic, you'll see there at the top, activate your audience is one of the first things we need to do with our buyers. And AEO really fits into that, because when our buyers go and ask questions to Google or ask questions to ChatGPT and you show up as one of the answers, you are certainly activating your audience. They are becoming aware that you exist and the problem that you can solve. And so it's definitely an activate your audience element, but also the next piece down there, establish authority, as you're following along on the wheel. It's huge in establishing authority, because the same idea, if one of your buyers goes to Google or ChatGPT or Perplexity, and they're asking for advice and help, or how do I solve this, or who are the best vendors for that, and you show up, you're getting that transfer of trust, because obviously you wouldn't be going to a Google if you didn't trust the answers that you were getting from them. And so if you show up as the answer, then you are establishing a short authority. You're definitely showing to that user that you are qualified to solve this problem, which is one of the big things we have to do in the world of pipeline growth and demand gen. And so with that, Jesse's going to get into the details here in a minute, but I definitely wanted to encourage you, if you haven't taken our pipeline growth assessment yet, please do. It's a wonderful tool. It takes about 5 minutes to take it. It's a self-assessment. It walks you through 20 questions. It'll really take you through our pipeline growth process and help you identify, number one, what you're doing really, really well, where there might be gaps, and then it gives you very specific, tailored answers with tips and advice on what you can do to improve those things. And so I'm going to have the team drop a link in chat for our pipeline growth assessment. Again, take it now, take it later. It's a great tool to help you just find, in the world that we're in where everything's changing, it seems like every day it's a different world. This is a great way just to get some grounding on what you're doing well, where are the gaps, and very specific tactical things that you can do to address those gaps. And more than likely, the gaps that we recommend that you address, we probably have videos on our website from previous growth shows with tips on how to do that. Not a sales pitch at all. Just highly encourage you guys to take a look at that. Okay, let's move on to the next topic in the agenda. And, about 6 months ago, maybe not even that long ago, 4 months ago or so, we started polling the audience. When you register, we take you through a poll and we ask you questions related to the topic. And that's been really helpful in just helping us craft and tailor the content that we share during the growth show. But it also helps us just kind of say back to you what we're hearing. And I wanted to share my screen real quick. I did a post on this. So you guys, I think we had like almost 100 people fill out the survey. And let me see if I can talk and share screens at the same time. Not easy for me,
like talking and chewing gum.
Yeah, it's kind of like, boy, don't ask me to share screens, talk, and chew gum at the same time. I'm not going to do that at all. So this is really interesting, Jesse. So just to kind of set the framework again, you guys filled out a survey when you were registering for this event. We asked you some questions in there. I used AI to basically get all that data into something useful that we could present to you. I did a post about it yesterday. That's what we're looking at right here. I've got a link to that post in the agenda. But one of the questions that we asked is, where do you want to show up? Like, where do you think in the world of AEO, answer engine optimization, what channels are the most important to you? And man, Jesse, I was so surprised. Nearly 60% said they want to show up in the answers in Google. Did that surprise you?
Shocks me, right? I think especially on a poll on LinkedIn specifically, when the talk is like anti-Google, right? It's like ChatGPT and all these other things, like discrediting Google. I'm really shocked to see that it's such a high percentage. But what that tells me is this audience, or your audience, is definitely more in tune on what probably values most, at least from my point of view. We're in alignment there. So yeah, I was definitely in shock to see that, just because of what the other gurus are always talking about, and that's usually outside of Google.
Yeah, what's so crazy? It seems like in the last 60 days, the Claude mentions, like, it seems like going back to your point about LinkedIn, you can't turn on LinkedIn without somebody saying Claude is the most wonderful, best AI of all time. Mm-hmm. It's like they all forgot about ChatGPT, or they start to hate on ChatGPT for whatever reason. But, I totally was shocked by this too. But it does tie back to this audience really gets that B2B buyers go to Google. I mean, 80% of B2B buyers, there's a stat, will use Google at some point in their decision journey. Right. And so I can kind of see how we would want that to be the case. So I agree with what the poll said. I was surprised by it. And I also agree with you, Jesse. I think getting in that Google answer engine is pretty important. So here's the next question. What outcomes are you hoping to achieve? And so again, these are the folks that registered for today. So this audience, you guys told us the number one thing you wanted to achieve in your answer engine optimization objective was to show up as a brand that's mentioned, to be recommended. And then the third one was traffic. Jesse, I would have thought traffic would have been the number one answer. What about you?
Yes, but I think it also kind of shows, again, just the probably the knowledge of your audience here, knowing that website traffic is a little less likely, but a better goal would probably be brand mentions. And just as a little preview, that's pretty much what my presentation's about. So I think I'm in the right place.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. There was one more piece here that was just the obstacles. And so these obstacles, we asked the question, what's keeping you from being successful with AEO? And man, these felt a lot like SEO type obstacles to me, Jesse. Lack of time, not knowing technical SEO. How do we measure success? I mean, you've been in the SEO business a long time. Are those typically the obstacles you hear on the SEO side?
Exactly the same. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So, the thing about it's not like running ads, AEO and SEO, it's not like build some creative, write some messaging, go pay to show up. It's more of a ongoing discipline. I hate to use the word art, but it's, in many ways, advertising's like renting a hotel room for the night. You go and pay money and you get the placement. But SEO and AEO is more like building a house. You have to go build the plans, do the work. Once you have the house, you got to maintain it. You got to mow the grass. You got to do all that stuff. So that's where it's a discipline. I think it just takes a special kind of skill in order to do it. So awesome. Well, thank you guys for participating in the poll. It always is very helpful to us as we're trying to put this presentation or put the show together and make sure that we're relevant on everything that you guys want to hear about. And so, Jesse, before we get to your presentation, a couple of questions I just wanted to touch on. And the first one was just, the shift in AEO. Tell me what's going on. We had you on here about a year ago. Man, I think 2 years ago when you first came on the show, we probably weren't even talking about showing up in answer engines because I don't think that was a thing. What have you seen, especially in the world of B2B, over the last 12 months or so?
A lot of things, like what we call the dang thing is probably one, right? A year ago, when we last did a presentation on this, it was more about LMO, and I haven't heard that term since. I was calling it GEO for a while, and then I started calling it AEO recently, and I even call it like AI search. It kind of depends on who I'm talking to and what their knowledge is. So the terms are always changing, so that's one thing. And then our tactics have changed. I would say probably like a year ago, we were much more content focused on, okay, how can we get our content seen in AI search or AEO? And now we're more brand focused. And that's really the biggest, I would say, shift for us when it comes to how we implement or how we do AEO. So yeah, a lot of it's changed.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. I'm sure you'll talk about this in the presentation, but thank you putting my old SEO hat on. It was always about content and getting the right keywords and establishing EAT. But now it's like, is the brand known? Is the brand trusted? How do we signal to AI that we are a trusted, worthy brand? And then also, I guess, communicate for these topics, for these services, for these types of answers. That's real interesting. How is this impacting the buyer? We've already talked about traffic not being the number one goal, but tell me from your perspective, if we were to put the shoes on of a typical customer of all of us, we're all B2Bs here, and put ourselves in the shoes of our buyer. Now that they know they have this ability to get ubiquitous answers without having to click to websites, how does that impact them?
Yeah, the buyer is just a lot more savvy at researching, and I think we all are. So there's just more accessible information, and it's easy to get, right? So that's really changed the game of like, instead of looking at a bunch of websites to go, look for a solution or maybe even look for an answer for something, it's changed. Now you can ask one machine and it will kick out a lot of really good research information. And so I think, the buyer, when they get to your like website, a lot of times they already are familiar with like what you do and what your brand, especially if they found you in other places outside of like, outside your website. So I think that's what's really, really changed.
Yeah, that's interesting. It kind of goes back to our framework and how we were talking about activate your audience and establish authority. Those are things that you can do inside of AI, and that doesn't even happen on our website. It's happening on these platforms. And to your point, we're seeing this too, Jesse. The traffic is definitely going down to websites from channels like search. and you're not getting a ton of traffic from ChatGPTs or perplexities these days. In fact, the last stat I saw was something like 100 to 1. Like for every click you get in a Google, or for every 100 clicks you get in Google, maybe you earn a click in like AI. But the traffic that does come, to your point, is already kind of thinking you're the right solution for me. And so the conversions are better. So the leads are way better that we get than the old days. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, for our customers, what we do really well is like high intent traffic is better than it's ever been for our customers. And so that tells us, the pages that we want them to see are up. Engagement is up, way up. So just these are standard Google metrics that you can see from Google Analytics, is that people are more familiar. Instead of like, oh, I got here from a blog post, I read the blog post and then I left. It's more of like, I got here from a core service or the actual homepage, and then I searched around, looked at pricing, went to the contact page. That kind of interaction is really like we see a lot in the data. And the other thing too, I'll mention this in the deck, but I think it's important now, is like brand searches have skyrocketed. And so you can see that from like Google Search Console and other areas. People are ending up on a website by searching or Googling a brand. And we have different theories of why that's happening. And I think if you're doing, AEO exercises across the internet where you're trying to appear in all these different places, then people get familiar with your brand and then they Google your brand. And we're seeing that in our own data with our customers. So it's definitely changed.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Too, is I was reading some research the other day, and the average B2B buying cycle, I think this was some LinkedIn data that just came out, is over 200 days from the time that they first experience your brand to the time that they become even like in your pipeline. And then whatever your sales cycle is from that point on is different for everybody, but that's a long time. And the average B2B has 22 different influencers, and they're looking at 14 different places. So the interesting thing about the influencers is the 22 influencers, half of those, or the 22 people, if you will, that were involved in that decision, half of them worked for your company and half of them did not work for your company. So it's peers, it's podcasts, it's other human beings. And so, to tie back to what you just said, Jesse, the brand searches are up because our buyers are hearing from peers, they're hearing from LinkedIn, they're hearing from podcasts. I listen to podcasts all the time, mainly when I work out. So I might find out about a brand and then I'm like, oh, I got to go check them out. I'm going to go to Google and type the name of the brand in. I'm not going to go www. Everybody's URLs are so weird these days because they're all taken up. You got to just Google them. That's how you find them. So
Sure.
That's a really interesting point. Also, I'm just seeing, like, back in the days when we were optimizing for using blogs as our primary method, people would come spend 5 minutes on a blog and not visit any other page on your website. So the bounce rates were always really high. But what we're seeing now is to your point, they're landing because they're farther down the funnel, if you will. There's more authority established, And because of that, they do want to go to your services page, go to your about page, check your pricing. And so does seem like a lot more engagement happening with these folks.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. So what are the biggest misconceptions? We talked about, what's changed and, how buyers are different, but what are people getting wrong about AEO these days?
I think what a common is like they're completely different strategies, when in fact you can, if you know what you're doing, you can do AEO and SEO pretty much simultaneously. Now, if you just focus on blogging and that's what you think of AEO and SEO is, that's not going to work. Probably not going to work for either SEO or AEO. But if you're thinking of growing your brand, then that can help you appear in both SEO and AEO. And so if you do that and you do it well, you can still for our customers, you can still see an increase of those traditional metrics that we care about in SEO, like organic traffic. Because we have the data. Our customers are still doing really well in organic traffic, mostly because we got less focus on informational type of content and more focus on maybe middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel type of content. And that's where we spend most of our efforts because that's more, it can be more brand related. So
Yeah.
that's really where we've really shift gears. And so, yeah, SEO can definitely work still. And you definitely can do SEO and AEO simultaneously if you focus on brand.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So optimizing for bottom, mid and bottom of the funnel, which, when you think about blogging, historically, it's been top of the funnel, answering a theoretical question or around a topic that you might be a subject matter expert on. And that's where you could get those long tail, what we used to call long tail key phrases. And so that's very interesting, but it makes total sense because if I'm the buyer and I'm going to get the answer for the long tail stuff in AI, I'm not going to come to your website. So why not optimize for the stuff that's lower, closer to the conversion? That makes a ton of sense.
Right. Absolutely.
Awesome. Great. Well, I know you've got a presentation to share with us, Jesse. So I'm going to pass the baton over to you, let you share your screen and walk us through what you've got to share with us today.
All right, here we go. It looks like this is working. You see my deck okay?
Yep.
All right, let's move on. Okay, so let's first just real quickly talk about maybe like the return of like SEO and AEO. And I think we all know the differences here, but just a quick refresh. SEO, kind of the return is pretty clear, right? Like you do some optimization, you get found on Google, people can click on a link and get, go to a website, and then in return, you can get website traffic, and then traffic can lead to something else. The return for AEO is a little fuzzier. It's a little more complex because you're asking an AI AEO tool or AI search tool a question, and then you're getting an answer. And then from that, maybe you get to see a brand mention, maybe not, depending on the question. And so it's a little fuzzier. So why are we doing this? If the return, we're all busy here. Why is this important? Well, I could show you some data of like why, or how AEO is growing and more people are using that. But I think we all know that. That's why we're here on this webinar or webcast. But how about are some goals? And some clear goals that could help you is getting your brand mentioned in AI generated answers. Okay. And getting your site or your brand cited and linked as a trusted source. And then other things, like those things that you can't really track, like is your expertise shaping the answer itself? This stuff that you already talked about earlier, Paul, but are you influencing high intent buyers before they click or before they get to your site or before they talk to a salesperson? And that's all real beneficial when more and more people are using an AEO as a tool or AI as a tool. So this is, again, probably one of the bigger shifts. And this is kind of like, again, the theme of my deck here. And this is how I used to think of it. How do I get my content seen in AEO? That's really hard to do. Think about more of like, how do I get my brand seen, right? And if you think about that, now you're in a good place to actually do something worth your while and actually have a goal that you're going to get something in back from. And again, that is kind of the theme of this whole presentation, is more about your brand. And so when you're asking an AI tool, questions, think of these three buckets. Is it informational? Is it research level or decision level? So if it's informational, maybe you'll get a citation or brand mention, but a lot of times no. But research level and decision level, more of that middle funnel, bottom of the funnel type of queries, those are the areas that you have an opportunity to be cited and have your brand seen. Okay. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth here and talk a little bit more about informational. And the reason why is, like, I think this is kind of programmed in our brains, a lot of us B2B marketers, is because this is how we've been doing SEO for the last 10 plus years, is like, okay, we got to be a thought leader and we got to create all this informational content so people can find our website organically. Well, what we've learned, right, is like, well, if you focus on that, well, maybe you'll get cited on Google, because Google does a really good job in sharing links. So they have like AI overviews and AI mode. So yeah, you could get your brand seen there. But in other platforms like ChatGPT, depending on the question, a lot of times you're not going to get your brand cited or your brand mentioned or anything like that. So if you spend too much of your time focusing on creating informational content, then what's the point of it, right? So it's think of maybe the next step down or the middle of the funnel type of content or middle of the funnel type of maybe query or keyword or whatever you want to or prompt. Those are the opportunities on how you can get your brand cited, your brand mentioned. So as an SEO agency, I care about like I need a list of B2B SEO agencies. That's an opportunity for my brand to show up at SpearPoint Marketing. Top SEO agencies for SaaS companies and so forth. Those are type of terms or prompts that I care about to get seen in, right? And here's an example. This is more of a brand versus brand type of question in ChatGPT. But so this is information about SpearPoint Marketing. So it mentions my brand, which is great. And then those 2 green clicks, those are links to my website, which is great. That makes sense. But look at these other, like these blue clicks. So I have clicks that go to Clutch, which makes sense for me because Clutch is one of my most important review sites that we use. So we have a lot of information about SpearPoint Marketing there and our pricing and who we, who our customer base is, and then reviews, case studies. And then this other one, like it referenced SCH, and it did twice, called this SEO Company Hub. I've never even heard of that before I did this little exercise, right? But turns out they have a lot of good information about my business and my reviews and stuff like that there too. So the point I'm trying to make here is when you're thinking of your brand, think of not just your website, but think of other places your brand is mentioned, okay? And that is really what these AI tools can pull from, not just your site, but where it can gather information outside of your website that's about your brand. And then decision level, this is more bottom of the funnel, so it's kind of a little bit repetitive here, but these are those next level questions, but maybe a little bit like closer to maybe a buyer possibly making a decision. We use the example I use here is like best B2B SEO agencies in Colorado. And instead of using ChatGPT, I used Claude for this. And guess what? I got different like site or citations here. I didn't get a website citation or to my website, but I did get a query in my get my Google business profile shown there, right? And that makes sense because I mentioned Colorado, so that's more of a local query or a local prompt. And then it mentioned a different directory, Design Rush, which that is on my list of like active review sites, probably like number 5 or 6 on my list that I care about. But that's what Claude pulled. And so you don't really know which like directory sites to focus in on. It kind of depends on the query, but it's definitely important to have your brand across a variety of different ways. Now, why did Claude choose these to show like my Google business profile and Design Rush as a recommendation? Well, because it was related to the query. So I actually had reviews on both these platforms that mentioned these keywords in the query, B2B, SEO, and in Colorado, right? And so that was really the why it pulled information from that. And I probably had that there better than on my actual website. So that could be a theory too. So now let's talk about like, okay, how do you get mentioned? And the first thing that we talk about here is probably step number 1 is just your brand entity, define your entity and making sure it's super clear. So your brand should be unmistakable of like who you are, who you serve, who you work with and so forth. So think of your ICP and positioning, but not just on your site, but across the internet. That's super important here. And this is an exercise that we do with every customer that we take on at SpearPoint is we do this fairly early. We ask for ICP and positioning and messaging from our clients. And with B2B marketers, we always get a great, like, hey, a presentation deck or a document that clearly defines ICP positioning. But then when I see that, I'm like, okay, where does this exist? Is it on the website? Most of the time, yes. A lot of times, no. So what's the point of having this pretty deck if it's not on your website? So that's step one. If it is on your website, is your positioning consistent on your Google Business profile? Is it consistent on your LinkedIn profile? Is it consistent on, I don't know, maybe your Better Business Bureau, or like for me, it's like Clutch and Design Rush and all these other different areas that can talk about my brand. So it's really your positioning and your messaging needs to be consistent across not just your site, but across other places on the internet, because I just showed you why in some examples that AEO doesn't just pull brand mentions from your website. It pulls it from other areas that also mention your brand or website. Second one here, and this is more content related, and this is more of like what we used to talk about, or what I used to talk about AEO probably a year ago, is having that well-structured content, because you got to have those clear headers, tight definitions and bullet points and FAQs and schema, just well-formatted content. And that's definitely truthful, and AEO definitely prefers content that's clear and well-structured. Definitely. However, if it's informational intent or an informational type of topic, then you might not get cited. Or if you do get cited, maybe it's with bigger brands that already own that space or have a much more likely to get cited. So really got to think of, when you're creating this well-structured content, that the topic is relevant, again, to your brand and your messaging and your ICP. Right? And that's a better chance for your brand to get seen or mentioned in AEO. Okay. And the other thing too, which I would really add to this, is see if you're thinking of topics to write about, look at your competitors. See what AEO actually writes or recommends. And if it's already there, then see if you could outdo them. But make sure the topic is right. So an example is at SpearPoint Marketing, we're an SEO agency. I'm a smaller SEO agency. We have less than 10 people. I'm not going to write about like what is SEO or here's the top 10 ways to do backlinking, because these bigger companies, SEMrush or Moz or Ahrefs or these other bigger companies already are being recommended there. What chance do I have to be recommended by an AEO term from a smaller agency, much smaller brand? So I got to be very picky on like what kind of content I'm going to create, so I actually have an opportunity to show up. All right. So this takes that extra level of research, especially like competitor research, when you're looking at things to write about. You can't just say like, hey, we have really clear, well-structured content. That's not enough. It's got to be the right topic. And then 3 here, this is super important, right, is your social proof across the web. And some good examples here. One, I would always recommend start with your review sites. So Google Business Profile, maybe your Better Business Bureau, maybe G2, maybe Trustpilot. But if you have other industry-related review sites, those are great too. Like I showed you mine, like Clutch, and those other ones there. So so think of review sites on other platforms, and don't just put all your, if you are putting efforts and generating reviews, don't just focus on Google, focus on those other platforms as well, because I just showed you again in those examples, it just didn't pull from just one, it pulled from others as well. So think of it kind of expanding your review generating efforts. Next is industry blogs. This is more like backlinks or those guest posting and stuff like that, but really focus on high authority and industry related blogs to do that. And I put in Wikipedia here because it's kind of related. So if your goal or a good goal is to try to get your brand featured or earn, I would say, a Wikipedia page, because to earn a Wikipedia page for a brand is really hard. And you have to do things like have a really strong brand equity across the web. And consistent branding. And you got to have these other things that are impacted, like industry blogs, and backlinks from these high authority sites would help. But also the next one down, like press releases, and not just like paid ones that you can pay for, but more like real organic ones from interviews from like legit news sites are really, really, really helpful. So as a tip, if you focus on trying to get your brand featured on Wikipedia, or I should say earn a Wikipedia page, then you're doing things right for both Wikipedia and AEO for your brand. So it's a really good goal. It's a common goal that we recommend for a lot of our clients. Next is lists and roundups. You can get those from citation sites or blogs. And the other interesting one is like LinkedIn, Reddit, and then other social medias, specifically when they recommend brands. And we have a partner that does this really well for their own company. They're on Reddit a lot, so they engage within their own topic on other like really popular Reddit threads, and they mentioned their brand a lot in these popular Reddit threads. And more, and that next step, maybe a little gray area here, but on that next step, they have they encourage their customers to do the same. And I see that happen, and it helps a lot with their AEO and their SEO, because these other people are organically talking about a brand in a social media platform, or like Reddit, if you can consider Reddit social media. I kind of do. So that's another great way to do it, and a very strong tactic. And then this is kind of the last one here, and this is more kind of content related. So building contextual authority. And then you can do this internally or externally, so on your site or even off the site here. But thinking of topics that are more specific, maybe more like research level or decision level type of topics, right? So when we talk about maybe in a blog post or something like that, we don't just include the facts, but we include like according to, if it's our site, according to SpearPoint marketing, or according to the brand, then that type of information has a better way to get your brand cited, and maybe even informational type of prompts. But other stuff that's better, more of those research level, is like best of or top solutions in an industry or top brands in an industry. And again, one of the sweet spots, one of the things that we do a lot of is like brand versus brand, or brand versus a solution. Or so an example could be like, the difference between hiring a B2B SEO agency versus doing it in-house, or hiring a freelancer or something like that. We do a lot of that type of content too, because we know that's being searched, and then it's a great opportunity at the research level to get our brand featured. So you got to be a little bit more clever on creating content if you're focusing on AEO there. Almost done. Just one more slide there, Paul. And the last one I have here is, and I already mentioned this before, is if you do SEO and AEO, and if you do it together with a focus on growing your brand, you could definitely win at both. And we're definitely seeing that for all our customers, because we really shift our efforts probably the last 6 or 7 months with our clients. And again, how we know it's worked is not only are we seeing our brand or seeing our clients' brand featured on different like platforms across the web, including AI tools, but we're also seeing a higher engagement level on our customer sites. And then we're also seeing a lot, double, triple the amount of brand searches and brand clicks to sites, because people are seeing their brand outside the site. And so if you do that together, then yeah, you can move the needle in both ways, SEO and AEO. So SEO is not dead. It's actually growing. It is definitely for us. And you could definitely tie it to AEO or AI search, whatever the heck you're calling it. And that's pretty much it. That's my presentation.
Awesome, Jesse. That was so good. I took down some notes. I wanted to give you the opportunity to share all those slides. I know you had so many, so I just took some notes that I could just kind of wrap up a couple of thoughts. When you were talking about brand identity and how important that is, one of the things that reminded me of is, in the world of marketing, we always want to come up with a new, cute way to talk about our services, and we try to do that as a differentiator because we want our widget to sound a little bit different than our competitor's widget. And so we come up with a cute way to call our widget something different. Ours is the left-handed smoke shifter. Theirs is just the smoke shifter, something like that. But when we're trying to get our brand cited, what your presentation reminded me of is the legacy keywords are more important, because how does your buyer think about your product? Not the cute way that you're trying to describe your product so it sounds different than the competitor, but we probably need to focus on what are the legacy ways to describe what we do, or what your buyer might use to describe. And then that needs to be consistent in all those places like you talked about, like G2 and Clutch and our LinkedIn business profile. And that I think is really helpful. So stay away from those cutesy, use them in your pitches, but don't use them when you describe your business, because you really, to me, I think about AI, they're like investigators. They're looking for clues. So they're going around, they're scrolling LinkedIn, they're scrolling search results, they're scrolling our website, and they're trying to piece together, what the heck does this company do? How can they be useful to my audience, the AI's audience? And so the more we can drop clues that make sense to them, I think the more we're going to get cited. So that was really interesting. I loved your concept about content, and the thing that just made me think about, I want to share with the audience is, having a flywheel is so important. So, one of the things that's been really good, like you said, Jesse, good SEO is good AEO. And it made me think about EAT, EEAT, which is Google's, experience. I can't remember what all they are, but if you're really good at EAT, what is it? It's experience, expertise, authority, and trust. Yeah. If you're focusing on building that information, you're going to win in both. But, we do we don't have quote unquote an AEO strategy at Vindy, but we have been doing this content flywheel thing for a long time. And where we have people like Jesse come onto our show, we talk about Jesse online. So now Jesse's getting some cred that way. Jesse's talking about us online. We have this event. It then becomes blog content. It becomes social content. It becomes a replay page on our website. It gets picked up in other places. I mean, that is so huge, I think, in helping get your content sourced. I wanted to show just a quick example while we've got a little bit of time here. And I'm going to give Jesse the cred for this for sure. So Jesse, we mentioned at the top of the call, he is our first three-peater. Okay. So back in 2024, we actually did a session with Jesse, and that was our first time Jesse and I ever did a show together. And so the show was live. It got added to our website. We did social content. We did a blog about it. And now when you do a search for B2B SEO ranking factors, you'll see there's Vindy Digital right there showing up at the top. This is the information that basically came out of what we talked about, Jesse, 3 years ago, if you will. Here we are getting cited as from our website, but notice this is LinkedIn here at the top. It's the same graphic because we repurpose our content. But the point I'm trying to make is we took one show, we repackaged it in a flywheel perspective. We had a great smart person like you come on and drop knowledge bombs for our audience. And now 3 years later, we're showing up as the answer for B2B SEO ranking factors. I mean, we're not really even an SEO agency, but we're showing up for that because of the things that you are doing, the things that you talked about in this presentation. Another real quick example is we've been really focused on this concept of the clickless future and how people aren't clicking and going to our websites as much. And, we talked about that even in this session about how they're coming later. But we had Rand Fishkin on our show back in September, who kind of authored this whole concept of Clickless Future. And so again, we promoted that. We wrote blogs. We had a white paper. We did social content. He came on the show. We put the replay on our website. And now if you go look at Clickless Future in Google, we're the answer. If you want to know what's going on in Clickless Future, we're showing up here. I mean, here's Bain and Forbes showing up, and we're up here number one because of the things that you just talked about. We found the world that we want to play in. We play with really smart people, and then we leverage the heck out of that content, and that establishes our EAT. And as we can see here, not only are we showing up in the answer, but we're also showing up as the number one listing in Google. So that's the SEO component. This is the AEO part up here at the top, but there's the SEO part right there. And so the stuff that you're talking about absolutely 100% works.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just keeping it consistent and back to that brand entity. And it's such a common thing because like I think there's turnovers, right? When you hire a new maybe a new demand gen head of your demand gen or something like that, or a director of marketing or something like that, what happens? What's the first thing they do? They go to hey, we're going to go to a market plan and we're going to update our ICP and we're going to update our messaging, and not thinking that, well, you just built maybe the previous messaging. It took a long time to build it, not just on your site, but across the internet. And now you're going in a different direction because you're being smart. Maybe that's a good business decision and maybe it's the right one. That's not what I'm saying. But what you need to do is make sure that, okay, we're not just updating this in the material and the presentation to our boss and sales staff and whatever, but we're also implementing it not just on your website, but across the web. And I think that's, if there's one takeaway, and because I deal with B2B clients all the time, that's the first miss I see right off the bat, almost every single time. And you could do some really deep research, like on ChatGPT or Claude, and look for discrepancies in your brand across the internet, and you will find discrepancies in different messaging and stuff like that. You can update and put that on your task list and stuff like that. That's what we do in our onboarding process. So yeah, that's it seems one of those things like, oh yeah, Doug goes over the messaging, but I guarantee most of us don't do it as well as we think we do.
Yeah. And Jesse, I can just agree with you. We work with very similar clients, and one of the first things we always ask for is their unique selling proposition, their messaging, their elevator pitch, all that stuff. And then you go look for it online, and it is so inconsistent. Like, it's all over the place. And it's because, hey, we got a new marketing manager this month, or we have a new product marketing manager, and they're always trying to tweak things. And, I think one of the first places to get started as we start wrapping up here on where do I go with this is there are some AI visibility tools that are out there that you can run and just see what your AI visibility looks like. And so we have a tool like that. In complete transparency, it's the HubSpot tool. We're a HubSpot Platinum partner. But we can run your website through one of these AI visibility tools. I'll share my screen with you and show you what one looks like. I've got one here somewhere. Yeah, here's one. I'm gonna show you guys this. Let me share my screen again. So this is what it looks like. I actually ran it on us. Now, I just showed you we're showing up in AI answers. But this doesn't look very good for us. Jesse, we need to bring you guys in to help us with our AEO. But this is what the AI visibility report looks like. So it goes in and it looks at ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and it gives you a score on several things: brand recognition, gives you some tips and how you're doing as it relates to that, market competition, who's showing up more than you, or how are you showing up based on your competition. It gives you some commentary on what you can do about that. It also gives you contextual information, sentiment analysis. And so for some reason, Perplexity loves us. I don't know why the other two don't like us as much. But, hey, the first step in fixing something is at least just understanding kind of where you are. And so this is a report that we can run for you. And then Jesse and I can actually meet with you and go over the report if you have any interest in that. And so the link to that is actually in the agenda right here where it says Get AI Visibility Report. So if you want to do that, that'll take you to my calendar, and just pick some time before we actually have our meeting. We'll run that analysis, and then we can sit down with you and go over the information with you. Also, there is a link to Jesse's presentation right here in the agenda. So if you want to just recap some of the stuff Jesse talked about, you can absolutely grab that there. And then one of the resources that I wanted to point out to you is this AI visibility cheat sheet. We actually put this together last year. You can grab that by that link there. It takes you to this great little asset that will give you some things that you can do to make your website more crawlable by the AI engines and to have you show up more often. So check that out. That'll be helpful. Certainly something we can talk to you about when we get together for a one-on-one session. Lauren, were there any questions? I kind of went off on a tangent there. I wanted to make sure people saw those things. Were there any questions that we could cover? We got about 5 minutes before we need to wrap.
Heather over on LinkedIn, she was wondering if PPC is still relevant with AI being like starting to take over a lot of question and answers and things like that.
So yeah, the answer to that question is yes. People are still searching on Google billions and billions of times every single day, and having an investment in PPC is still very much relevant because people are using that platform for those type of queries. So yes, absolutely, still important. Still, it does get more expensive every year, like any type of advertising platform. But there's still heavy volume of users on Google. It definitely still works.
Oh man, I know that they're all out there testing paid AI too, and I can't imagine. I know I've seen tests of it, I've seen screenshots of it. I can't imagine what that's going to be like, and I don't know that it's going to be good, but we'll find out. I'm sure it's coming. We
Every platform does it at some point, right? So We'll see.
I remember, I've been in this game so long. I remember when Google first came out. That's how freaking old I am, but they came out at first and said, we're never going to advertise. YouTube was like Yahoo was the number one search engine when they first came out. Right. And Yahoo was selling ads like crazy. And Google came out, we're never going to sell ads. We're never going to do it. And of course, that's how they make their gazillions of dollars. Yeah, most of their money comes from ad revenue these days. So crazy. Lauren, any more questions?
Yeah, I mean, this one was earlier on. So might be interesting here, but Brenda and Brendan, two very similar names, in the chat, we're kind of both wondering if Google is still a big influencer with like AI search results. I assume this question was kind of like, hey, if we're showing up a lot in Google, does that have a correlation to showing up in AI search results? And then Brendan jumped in and was wondering about like, hey, how does like frequency come into play? Like if you're showing up in a lot of different places and a lot of different sites, does that like help you more? Like if you're a Coke versus maybe like an RC, Coke might be showing up a lot more than an RC. How does that come into play?
Yeah. So I guess it's as long as it's consistent with your brand and it's good. That definitely matters. So I mentioned earlier in the deck is like, you don't want to put your eggs all in one basket. You want to kind of expand outside of there. But that doesn't mean like just do a little bit of effort in each place, right? It means you got to put some significant effort in a lot of different places. And so, yeah, that's really how to do it. But again, I mean, you got to know your competitors. So if you're a soda company that appears to everyone and you're relatively new and you're miles behind Coke and Pepsi, I probably would like go, okay, what's our angle, right? Are we maybe just a soda for maybe just athletes or maybe just basketball players specifically, and then that's who we focus in on? Then you could definitely compete and get something in return, and then get seen in AEO and SEO for those type of queries. So you just got to really know, you got to take it in a tactical approach instead of just going, I'm just going to try to be everywhere. No, it's got to be definitely strategic with probably your messaging first.
I've read some stuff too around that topic about freshness. It does seem like the AI engines.
Great one. I probably should have included that. Yes, and that's a good. If you have a lot of blog content, whether it's informational or middle of the funnel or whatever. And it says 2024 on it. Definitely boost it up to 2026 and maybe update the content. It's a good approach there. That's a really good one. I didn't add in this deck. I should have. And then never try to include a year in your URL slug or your domain, because that's a lot more permanent, right? So if you're talking about the top things to do in B2B SEO for 2024, make sure it's just in the content itself, so you can update it, later on.
Good tip.
Yeah, those are great tips. Any more questions, Lauren?
No, those were actually kind of the big ones. So
awesome. Well, gosh, we're actually doing great on time today. So appreciate everybody coming out today. I do want to let you know that we've got an awesome B2B Growth Show in store for next month. This is one where you're going to want the VP of Sales or your CRO to show up, because we're going to be tackling the age-old B2B challenge of sales and marketing alignment. And so we have Jen Allen Knuth that's going to join us. She's one of the best sales coaches out there, and she really gets pipeline growth and demand gen. And she's going to help us connect the dots on how do we get a go-to-market motion in play, which, we can do on the marketing side. But man, if the sales reps don't follow up with our leads, or they don't go and get accounts for, try to find contacts for engaged accounts, and they don't know what to do with those folks, then, sometimes it feels like it's for naught. And so we've got to get sales and marketing aligned and singing from the same hymn book, or working out of the same playbook, however you want to look at it. Jen's going to be here to help us unpack that in April. There's a link to register for that inside of the agenda. So please join us for that. It'll be a great show, just like this was a great show. Invite your CRO, your VP of Sales. It'll be great to have them there as well. Jesse, thank you so much, sir. You bring it like you do every single year. You certainly brought it this year. We appreciate you guys. Again, if you want to reach Jesse, his information is there on the agenda. And if you want a AI visibility report and to have Jesse and me review that together, just grab some time on my calendar. We'll do our homework, and we'll come in and share what we know and try to help you take some of the stuff you learned today and apply it specifically to your business. So until next time, guys, thank you so much for coming. We'll see you in April.